Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. It's been a minute since we've done this style of video, and I thought this would be a great time to revisit our friends over at Guitar Center. You know, it's been almost a year to the day since we've did our last video covering them, and I thought this would be a great time for an update. Now, I thought a great way to kind of address some of the issues we brought up with the last video would be to break down the recent interview that Gabe Dalporto, the CEO of Guitar Center, gave to Phil McKnight, which I thought was pretty interesting. I'm going to link the full interview down below. We're going to play a few clips of that, you know, kind of a reaction style, but hopefully with a little bit more research done into it. It's been kind of an interesting time for Guitar Center over the last couple of quarters, like 6 months or so. They have been reporting an increase in sales, but because Guitar Center is not a publicly traded company, they're privately owned, they don't really have to go into great detail as to what, like they reported in an article, they had a 6.6% increase in sales, but over, quarter over quarter, year over year, they don't specify, and technically they don't need to. But I thought it was fascinating, and Gabe doesn't mention this in the interview either, which I thought, I guess maybe they just didn't find the time to bring it up. So now, real quick, before I jump into this, if you enjoy this sort of content, feel free, like and subscribe. If you are following the channel, the next video coming up is in late May, Memorial Day weekend. We're going to do episode 2 of the Dean Guitars history. If you haven't watched episode 1 or the Hamer Guitars history video, I highly recommend it. Well, obviously, because I did it, but give those a watch. And without further ado, let's get into it, okay? It's like I said, I'm just going to play snippets of this. I've cut out Phil's questions, so we're just going to hear Gabe's answers, but I think you're going to get a good idea of kind of where this conversation is going by these clips. And what I'll do is essentially just kind of pause and, make little, lukewarm takes. Who knows? Let's get going. Here we go.
All of this really comes down to, like, how do you serve your customer? What does your customer want, and how do you serve your customer? To the extent that we've made missteps in the past, they've almost inevitably just been forgetting who your customer is and forgetting how to really deliver an amazing experience for your customer. When we talk to customers, it's so interesting. There's some they'll say the same things over and over again. And when I ask them, why do you come into a physical guitar store or music store? And they generally say one of three things. They'll say, I just need to touch it and feel it and hear it.
He goes right into well, I'm talking to people in the stores and I'm talking to them about how to deliver a better experience in the store. I don't know kind of what's going on here, but retail is not really growing in the brick and mortar way. I mean, I don't think that's a crazy hot take here. And yet Guitar Center has just been down this road, unrelentingly, just doggedly pursuing retail. Based on this conversation with Gabe, you don't get the really impression that, hey, maybe we need to pivot away from retail, or maybe we need to meet our customers in smaller locations, smaller footprints, or maybe we need to do things to make ourselves readily available to customers. Nothing of that. It was, you'll kind of hear, it's all this, I need to touch it, I need to feel it, I need to visit the stores, which I totally get. That's a percentage of customers who still want to go to a physical store, who still want to touch and feel, although that percentage is shrinking. So appealing to a smaller and smaller demographic of customers, I don't know how well that's going to, work out in the long run. But anyway, let's let Gabe continue here.
Say, I just need to touch it and feel it and hear it. And you can take two identical $20,000 Les Pauls, and they weigh different, the grain is different, they feel a little different, they sound a little different, right? You can read all the reviews online, and what you do is amazing. You still need to touch it and feel it.
I mean, it's $20,000 guitar. That's such a weird place to put that. Yeah, two $20,000 guitars aren't going to look the same or sound the same, and you may want to physically touch that guitar before you buy it, before you have it. I get all that. But Guitar Center, as we talked about in the last video, the average price of the guitar sold in their stores is $300. It's going to be a mass-produced, imported guitar, and it's going to have probably a solid finish or some sort of veneer finish. And heck, even two of those guitars might not sound the same. But this idea that the comparison of a $20,000 guitar to the average Guitar Center guitar, it's almost like wishful thinking on his part. To me, like buying a $20,000 guitar from Guitar Center, it's sort of like buying a BMW from Walmart. I mean, most people just aren't shopping for guitars at that price level. I get the analogy that, hey, at that price level, there's going to be some differences. And when you're spending that kind of money, you want to be a little bit more discerning. But it's just not the norm, right? I mean, if you're buying the starter guitar, most beginning guitar players are not playing and touching and trying to hear the sound. They're shopping for shapes, especially the younger players.
So people want to come into the stores. What did that mean for us practically?
People that you talk to in the stores want to come into the stores. You understand? Like he doesn't really like give this like, well, when we surveyed people, so many percent want to come to a store and so many want to shop online. I don't know if that's a purposeful, like we're just going to push our narrative of that people want to come into the stores and they want to touch stuff, but I don't know, that's changing, man. There's just no way, especially in a post-COVID world. I think, I'm not saying it's not a cool thing to go into a Guitar Center or a music store. I think maybe I'm just a little jaded because I'm a little older. But I think more and more people are becoming more and more okay with ordering online, especially when an online vendor, even Guitar Center, to be fair, they're in fact, if you look at their return policy, it's quite generous in some ways better than Sweetwater. But when an online vendor offers you a free money back, no hassle return, you get free shipping to have the guitar shipped to your house, try it on your rig in privacy of your home for whatever amount of time, that beats any in-store experience to me that Guitar Center could possibly offer. So I know that, again, there is going to be people in the comments who are going to, like the last video, I still love going into the Guitar Center, God bless you. But I think your demographic is disappearing. And I have to think Guitar Center knows this, right?
We needed to have much better product in our stores. And we've spent the last, year and several months driving relentlessly to get better product in the stores.
I will say, to Gabe's point, when you go into Guitar Center now versus last year or the year before that, the quality of product has improved. The first thing you'll notice when you go into a Guitar Center, especially the one here in Tulsa, giving my location away, I guess, is if the name of the channel didn't already. But when you go into the local Guitar Center, like the one here in Tulsa, the first thing you'll see are Gibsons. Now, the Gibsons are all like have these microfiber cloths kind of wedged underneath them on the hooks because nitrocellulose, you can't just throw it on a hook for a month and not expect the nitrocellulose to burn or to have problems with, all the things that you do with a really fragile finish like that. And Guitar Center, of course, I think is going through some growing pains like that because in the past they had not had that amount of really nice upper end guitars before. It's a little strange to see, a $3,000 Les Paul sandwiched between three Squires, but okay. He said he wanted to do it and he's making it happen. They say they're growing in sales. So, hey, what do I know, right?
And we had way over index on the beginner, and we had way under index on the mid and premium tier and the really drool-worthy products. And we've changed that. And, for many of our categories, that transformation is done. For others, it's coming. But we have a much better assortment. And we still have a beginner product, but we have much better mid-tier, much better premium tier.
So I have to think, I think he'll talk about this too, that the moving away from the beginner tier is a result of the Amazon, Temu, AliExpress, whatever, beginner guitar or guitar, that sub $300 guitar market has really been dominated, like I said, by Amazon and some of these direct to market retailers. It's getting really difficult, I would think, for a brick and mortar, a mom and pop Guitar Center to sell to beginners. That doesn't mean it doesn't happen, but I teach guitar here part time, And a lot of my new students who come in with guitars are buying them, or their parents are buying them, I should say, on Amazon. So in this clip, this is going to be where Gabe, he's taken a lot of flack, but this is going to be a clip where he's going to make lots more of these Disneyland references. And I'm going to let some of this play, but I mean, I think we all kind of know where this is going. Let's hear it.
They say things like, sometimes I just need to go to Disneyland. And that's their words, Disneyland.
Right.
Or sometimes they call it the candy store.
The candy store, Disneyland. I mean, all this stuff. I mean, I don't doubt that at some point somebody in a retail Guitar Center saw him, or he was having a conversation or whatever, and they brought it up. I think Gabe really took this and ran home with it because, again, remember, we were kind of making fun of this with the last video. He had brought this up last time, and his idea is to change this retail store into sort of like a theme park. So here's my big issue with this, and I know we're beating a dead horse, right? I'm not the only one who's come down on him for the Disneyland comment, but some of the biggest issues right now with Guitar Center have to deal with the time that you're spending in line checking out product. So comparing yourself to Disneyland, a place notorious with long lines, waiting, just getting gouged at every little stand for money, and I don't know if that's a great thing to like compare yourself to. I would also argue about this whole thing about a retail experience. This has sort of become a very trendy thing to say, well, what kind of experience does the customer have in the store? I understand it from the perspective of you want clean, readily available product, easily seen, that sort of thing. You need to make it easy for them to get questions when they have them, if they're buying their new guitar. That's what people really want. I don't know that people go into Guitar Center and are looking for candy or looking for a thrill ride. They're looking to play guitars. They're looking to buy guitars, or, and a lot of them are probably there to buy accessories. Most of the time you're selling more accessories than you are guitars. I'm going to guess, highly speculate. One of the big issues we've talked about with Guitar Centers is what part of Disneyland, by the way, is the part where you stand behind the guy bartering with the teenager at the counter over selling his 90s Korean Epiphone Les Paul. What part of the Disneyland experience is that? Because every time you go into Guitar Center, you're behind that guy. Now, I will say I went in there recently and of course I'm behind that guy and I don't know what he was selling, but whatever. And I got helped after about 5 or 10 minutes. But the fact that you have to still deal with that, forget the Disneyland experience. Make it easier for people to buy stuff and get out.
But we're the candy store to them. We're Space Mountain to them. Right. And they want to come in and have fun and experience and be around other.
I went to Space Mountain. I waited in line for an hour and a half. That's all I remember about Space Mountain. There's 5 minutes of the ride, and there was an hour and a half of waiting in line.
Like-minded people. And really be part of the music scene, but also just have fun. And what did that mean for us? Practically, it meant, well, let's just be honest, our stores were kind of disorganized and a little dirty. But more importantly, all of our best product was locked up. Our best guitars were on the top row, locked.
Yeah.
And it wasn't fun. You couldn't go in and just grab something.
It wasn't fun. It wasn't fun, Gabe. I get it, dude. But the grocery store isn't fun. Had to buy a car recently. That's sure not fun. You can't make that an experience that's ever going to be fun. Guitar Center was founded by a guy who had been in the used car sales business, and Guitar Center was always run on a very low, putting as little money into the stores as possible and running them as cheaply as possible. So that's why they always look kind of barren and kind of rough.
I ran a place as cheap as anybody. I could, if you haven't heard this story, I want to see how cheaply I could do business. So I would never buy any pens or paper, scratch paper or paper clips or rubber bands or any of that. And
so I appreciate that he's trying to do something different and move away from that. But again, it's 2025, Gabe, and retail ain't exactly growing, and you're trying to make theme parks out of these retail stores, it sounds like. So I'm not sure how well that's gonna work. And
I can walk in and grab, a really nice guitar off the wall, plug it in to these brand new massive pedal tables where we would take 50 pedals at a time, chain them all together, and just start to explore sound, right? And our playing time, actual time spent in our stores, is up 25% because of that. So people are just spending more time playing, having fun. And then the third thing they say is...
So there's a couple of things that are going on here. One is he's talking about, I think it was called Pedal Island at one point. Our friends at the Blues Lawyer Confessional, I think, did a video talking about the Pedal Island at their location. In Tulsa, it's just the pedal station. Now, I got to be honest, when I was a kid, this was happening. When Guitar Center actually first moved into Tulsa, they were doing something just like this, and they had stopped. Probably because, their equipment was probably getting a little too beat up, but they've done it again. I think it's a cool idea in theory, and it gives you a good-ish idea of what pedals sound like. But currently the pedals are plugged into their house brand Gamma amps. Okay, so if you have a Hot Rod Deluxe, if you have a Marshall JCM 800 or whatever, something that's not a Gamma. I don't know how much of an idea you're really getting, especially if you're a big stickler for tone and you're really looking for a certain sound, and it's plugged into like 50 different pedals. I mean, who's to say that guy from Vertex would throw a fit? I don't see any buffers, bro. So again, I'm not a big snob about that kind of stuff, but I still feel like even if you could grab maybe if you're a Les Paul player, you can grab a Les Paul, sit down with it and play a bunch of pedals. I don't know. I mean, again, if someone will ship it to me for free, no hassle return, and I can try it out in my house, why would I bother showing up in a really crowded, sometimes Guitar Center where there could be 2 or 3 other people playing at the same station with amps that are right next to mine? At what point am I really getting an idea of what this pedal sounds like, right?
Sometimes you just need to talk to somebody, and you're helping with that because you're providing all these really deep, like, rip instruments apart reviews. But sometimes, like you got to have a complicated problem and you need someone's advice and you need someone who has really deep knowledge. And
is that person at Guitar Center right now? Like, I get what he's saying. And I think what he's putting a picture of is in this ideal world of his, that Guitar Center is this place you go because it has answers to the questions that you have. And I think if we're talking like 1989, 1995, maybe late 90s, you could get away with that statement. But it's 2025. And honestly, even beginning guitar players are able to access so much information these days that it's really tough to really think that an employee at the Guitar Center is really going to be this beacon of knowledge. And the people that they're hiring, they seem nice enough, but we've all heard horror stories. And growing up, not just from Guitar Center, but from a lot of music stores growing up, I would just hear some really terrible advice from the employees. Because at the end of the day, a lot of it isn't objective. Which overdrive you should use for what guitar and amp, that isn't an objective thing. There isn't a definitive factual statement to say like, well, you should use a Tube Screamer with Strats and an OD1 style overdrive on Les Pauls. There's a lot of people in the comments who would disagree with me strongly with that. So is that the kind of knowledge we're looking at, buddy? Because everything else is easily found online,
And, so what does that mean for us? It means we need to invest in our product training with our sales force.
Right.
And when you walk into a Guitar Center, you need someone who just knows their stuff.
Do you? I don't know. When's the last time you needed to have somebody at a Guitar Center who knew their stuff? I just need, bro, I need strings and like 5. Can I get strings and get out of here? That's what I need. Or if there's a guitar I like, I need someone who can help me get the guitar down, probably off the top rack now, because that's where all the expensive guitars went. Guess what's up there now? Like mid-price guitars. Go to Guitar Center sometime now and look at what's up top. It's not expensive guitars. It's not cheap guitars. It's all the mid-price guitars that you and I would be buying.
And whatever problem you got, we can help you out. And that's a work in progress, but we're leaning heavily into that. So that to me is why it's important that brick and mortar exists, and why specifically it's important that Guitar Center exists. Because without us, you're just going to be ordering all kinds of stuff online, and you may not like it, you may not.
What? What are you talking about? You're just going to be ordering a bunch of random stuff because if Guitar Center wasn't here, You would just be lost in a sea of choices. What would you do if it wasn't for the Guitar Center employees? Except for, again, if this is pre-internet, I totally get you, Gabe. Do you ever have a question for a Guitar Center employee that isn't just a, hey, do you have this in black? Hey, can I get this off the shelf? Anybody can answer that question. It's just typical retail stocking question and answer stuff. I'm not saying that they don't get pressed about, hey, which type of humbucker do you prefer in the Gibson? Is it the 57 Classic or the Burstbucker? Or what's the difference between a Burstbucker and a Burstbucker Pro? I'm not saying that these don't happen, but a lot of people just go online and look this stuff up.
In my dream of the future, you walk into a Guitar Center and it's a little corny, but you know how Boy Scouts, they've all got badges all over, right? Yeah. Like, I'd like for us to be certifying our associates in different categories and different tiers of different categories. And you could maybe have like a platinum drum specialist or something, where it's just, there's this constant evolution and striving to achieve more knowledge.
Guys, get ready for some pieces of flair to happen at Guitar Center, all right? Merit badges, that's what's rock and roll right now. People want merit badges. They want to excel in levels of education. They want pieces of flair that they can show to all their friends who are going to be super jealous when they come into work with their Guitar Center work shirt. What the hell, these guys wear like a bowling shirt kind of thing? I don't even know what the hell an employee wears. And now they can have their merit badges that say, hey, I'm a platinum DJ specialist, so ask me about all your spinning. As you're asking them, hey, do you guys have a bathroom in here, or is it open to the public? Right. So this is great. I like this idea, Gabe, but I don't. Come on, bud.
Right. And then finding ways to reward them for that.
Oh,
right. And
finding ways to reward them for that. You mean like money, financial compensation, like paying hold on, paying someone to increase their skill set and to become a more valuable employee at your job? We're trying to find, guys, I'm sure they're racking their brain. Guys, what could we give these employees that would incentivize them to increase their product knowledge? Gosh, that's crazy, man. I mean, obviously I know Gabe knows this. This also kind of makes me feel like, what's going on financially to where you guys, I get there's 10,000 employees at Guitar Center. It's a lot of people, but this has got to be, if you really see a benefit in this product training, if you really believe that this overall is going to increase your sales, then the investment shouldn't be a problem to make. You know what I mean? And I think we'll talk about this a little later when we get into used guitars and things like this, where this product training could really help Guitar Center.
That's going to help our customers a lot. It's going to help our associates. Let's be honest. Like, if you are super knowledgeable, you're going to sell a lot more.
Right.
And if you talk to a drummer, they're like, I don't want to talk to anyone in a store who's not a drummer. Like, they really want to
win. I mean, drummers. You go to Guitar Center, do you have to talk to the drum expert, or do you just go in there and get your sticks and whatever else a drummer uses, your skins, your foot things, you know what I mean? Sometimes you just need a foot thing, right? Sometimes you just need a foot thing. You don't need to talk to the guy who plays in the Anthrax cover band and can show you how to play. Who cares wins? Again, maybe you do, but most of the time you probably don't.
They want someone who just really deeply knows drums, and the more we can get people trained up and very fluent in these categories at different achievement levels, I think the better for our customers, the better for our associates, better for the company, and we got to find a way to reward them for that.
Just got to find a way, guys. We just got to find a way to reward them. If only,
when I first started on developing the Guitar Center strategy, it really was define a target customer. And we called that customer the serious musician. And I got crap from all kinds of people, including Tom Morello, which was amazing because 10 million people read that article because of him. I'm like, thank you very much, Tom Morello.
Oh, thank you very much, Tom Morello. So I look, on one hand, you could say, oh, Gabe's a little, butthurt over the comments. I think what it is that he listened, which I think was great. We could make little comments, and I don't know what he saw, what he didn't see. I doubt he saw mine. but he clearly saw Phil's, and Phil I thought was fairly critical and but also fairly even-handed. He's somebody that I feel like, Phil isn't one just to give a spicy take for views, but he's also a very earnest and honest guy, and that must have really struck a chord with him, and he probably appreciated Phil's approach more than so than, if he happened to see mine, I was probably a little bitey, and then Guitar Max's video, I remember that. Everyone was kind of jumping on a train at one point. I was doing it. Hey, what can I say? We were all kind of baiting the clicks as it was. I will say this, he didn't back down. You know what I mean? Again, we talked about this. He put the more expensive guitars in the stores. They're very easily accessible. They are claiming an increase in sales. So to him, hey.
I wasn't saying I just want to sell people expensive guitars.
He just wanted to say he wanted to sell more expensive guitars, which I think when I first heard it, I was probably a little bitey too, but I'm seeing it now. I see the picture a little bit more, we got to move and shift our focus into mid-range and upper mid-range and things like that. But man, there's just so many Les Pauls in the Guitar Center. You could tell they were going to make that was going to be the expensive guitar. I don't see a ton of PRS, core models or anything like that. I see a ton of Gibson Les Pauls and Gibson ES335s and stuff like that in the really expensive Epiphones now. That's kind of what I see at Guitar Center. But, again, good on Gabe.
A serious musician to me is just someone where music's an important piece of your life.
That's important. Because before he did this interview, he was a little vague in other interviews about what he constituted as a serious musician. And why is this important is because this is the customer that Gabe wants. Or that Gabe wants to get more of, I should say. Because at the end of the day, Guitar Center does sell a lot of beginning instruments. They will always sell a lot of beginner instruments, but he's really trying to capture the next level, right? So we'll continue, and I'll stop yapping here.
I might be a touring musician. I might be a producer. I might be someone like myself who has a day job, but every night I go home and play music. Or I could be that kid who's 12 years old, practicing 2 hours a day to be the next Eddie Van Halen, and want a $200 guitar. That's fine with me, right? But we want to focus on people who are in it.
In it, buddy. Overall, I think this is okay. I feel now again, I'm not a marketing expert. I work in sales, but it's a business to business sort of thing from 8 to 5. But for me, I feel like I would probably get a little bit of scrutiny from my boss if I came to him with that as a target market. Well, my audience is people who like guitar and play guitar a lot, essentially. And they're not just weekend guys. They play it every day. They could be 7 years old or 75. It's broad. It's super broad, and I get where he's saying. I think what he's probably seeing and what Guitar Center is seeing, I'm speculating here, by the way. Most beginners, if they buy their guitar from Guitar Center, I would be curious to know what percentage of them come back for their second guitar or third guitar. Don't get me wrong, I have students who have bought multiple guitars from Guitar Center. I've got some that bought Les Pauls to really shove it in my face. But seriously, does that customer come back? And at a certain point, like myself, Guitar Center really doesn't serve much of a purpose for me, unless I need something last minute, or if I'm doing a video and I'm doing research. Honestly, if I really wasn't doing these videos, I probably wouldn't step foot in a Guitar Center. I buy my strings from places I can get them cheaper because I buy them in bulk. Guitars, I don't buy new guitars hardly ever unless the deal is just beyond smoking, because it's kind of like buying a new car. As soon as you drive that thing off the lot, you've lost a lot of value that you're probably never going to get back. And at a certain point too, in your playing history or your time as a player, you may learn how to maintenance, work on instruments, even repair them. And once you can do that, the world is your oyster to some degree within the guitar market. You can really clean up on some good deals. And the things that a Guitar Center sells to customers, like warranties, service plans, that stuff doesn't really appeal to me. I can work on my own guitars for the most part. Most of the things that the Guitar Center can do, I can do too. And, again, not knocking it, but that's where he's having this hard time. And I think that's where you're going to lose you're losing your customers, Gabe, is because they go buy the first guitar and they're great. But if they actually improve in their skill set, they quickly outgrow Guitar Center. If they do their homework, they can buy their guitars cheaper. They can buy their accessories cheaper. They go into a store that most of the time looks like you guys just moved in there. It's a little unkept. The product is sometimes all over the place. Like if you're looking for a pack of strings, it could be in one of 3 locations. These are things that, by the way, don't necessarily need to be touched or felt in person. I don't need to touch a bag of strings. I kind of know what Ernie balls feel like in a packet, and I don't need to be there unless I'm in an emergency or in a hurry. If I realize I need another set, or I need a backup set for a gig or a practice, or I want to try these new Cobalt, whatever super duper strings, and Guitar Center has them, I'll do that. But other than that, why go there?
Right, because you got to start somewhere, and it's hard to pick up an instrument. It's hard.
Yeah.
And you need someone to help you, and we can do that. Now we can do that in a convenient location that's like clean, that has cameras, so someone's watching your kid.
Okay, come on, bro. So, if this sounds a little in the middle of a conversation, Gabe is talking about the guitar lessons being taught at Guitar Center. So you can take guitar lessons, drum lessons, I imagine. So Gabe brings up that comment about, hey, it's clean store, which that's debatable, frankly. And we got cameras to watch your kids. Bro. You ain't fooling nobody. No retail store puts loss prevention cameras in a store because they're worried about child abduction. Now, are those helpful in cases of child abduction? Absolutely. But this idea that the Guitar Center is a safe place for your kids, it's a retail store. It's a retail store. I mean, don't even bother looking up YouTube videos where you see kids snatched out of retail stores. It's horrific. It'll give you nightmares if you have children. But Guitar Center isn't really in a place to offer or to say that they're creating a safe space for your children. They're not babysitters. They're a retail store. These stores, by the way, that in my opinion, are understaffed. So if they're understaffed, who cares if you have cameras? Who's watching the cameras? Who's ultimately watching the kids? If someone abducts your child from a Guitar Center, are they going to be able to stop it? They can't stop. They literally had a woman walk out with 2 guitars. She had them in both her hands at a store in California. I'll pull up the article here as I'm talking. She just walked out the store, and they never found her. For all intents, it doesn't sound like they ever captured this woman. She walked out, broad daylight, with 2 guitars.
Right. When I first joined the company, and I talked to our associates, and they're like, oh, my goodness, it is such a nightmare to take photos and get them into our system. I'm like, okay, great. So I went to our technology team and said, hey, can we rebuild them an app just to make this whole process way easier? And they did some things I wasn't even thinking about, which is now it's all on an iPhone that all of our associates have. To ingest it, they just take a picture. AI removes all the background.
That's why it's white in the background now.
Yeah, right.
I noticed that recently.
So now it's so much easier to get so many more good quality photos, and it's easy to upload. So I think about half of our used product now has been onboarded with the new system, and they all have much better photos.
Okay, what's this? So if you were on Guitar Center before this change and you look at it now, the pictures are better. They're better, but they're not where they should be, man. I mean, you can still go on there and see some really atrocious photos. This whole AI removes the background as if image applications before AI never could remove a background before. I mean, it's everything about Guitar Center right now still feels like 12 years old on the digital landscape. And the fact that he's like, well, look at this. I made him an app so they can make them easier to put used inventory. They can sell for you. They're selling your product. You would think that you'd want the fastest way to get your product online, especially the used product, the truly unique product itself. I also understand it's 300 stores. You're making this change in 300 stores. It's not easy, but
we, I think, probably by far have more used product than anyone else in the world. And when you ask a customer, or you actually ask the store manager, what's the most trafficked path in your store, they will say from the front door to the used wall, because it's just all this crazy newness. Like you walk into the store and you never know what you're going to find. Right. And there's some just wild, like vintage or unique product that walks through our store every day. And it's a treasure hunt. So to us, it's really important. We're trying to really lean into the used and vintage category because it's what people demand and they really want. And it's something that we can uniquely do that you can't do in really an online provider.
The Guitar Center used section is probably the best part of the entire Guitar Center. If you're a player of any kind and you dig and you just like that idea of not knowing what to go and see, in that store, the used section is always the best part. Because let's get real, when you go to a Guitar Center, it is kind of like going to a Walmart. This idea that every Guitar Center is different, they're certainly not. Every Guitar Center, about 90% of it is the same. Same Squiers, same Epiphones, same couple of Gibsons, same Ibanez, whatever. It's the used section that really brings the unique and interesting pieces. Now, the problem with this is, from a retail standpoint, the used sections always looks like a flea market. When I went into the one in the Tulsa place, I had to practically step over a couple of PV combo amps, to really, really test that gear out. And there was like barren shelves. The drum section next to it was missing big chunks of drywall out of it. I mean, look, for a guy who plays music, I'm kind of used to that kind of grungy flea markety experience. But if I'm a multi-million, billion-dollar, whatever sales, 300-plus retail chain operation, I would kind of be embarrassed that my store looks that bad. It just does look so grunge back there.
Richard Ash, when they closed Sam Ash, sent me a really nice letter. And in the letter, what he said, 25% of the market is owned by Guitar Center. 25 by Sweetwater, 25 by Amazon, and we were struggling with the last 25% with all the other mom and pops and everybody else there. And it's just got too hard. And more important to that statement, which I thought was insightful, was who takes what of the lion's share? Amazon is ineffective in every way at selling high-end guitars. Fender used to try to sell high-end guitars on Amazon. They don't even do that anymore because no one's buying an $1,800 guitar on Amazon.
Sorry, Phil. Got to correct you on that one. They do still sell $1,800 guitars on Amazon, and people are buying them because they do leave reviews on there. I get what Phil is saying. I think Phil is trying to be nice to Gabe, trying to, fluff him up just a little bit, not like a butt kiss, but, because the full interview, Phil is a little tough on Gabe on certain parts, which he needed to be. But I think Phil is also a big kind of proponent of the mom and pop and the retail stores and stuff. Obviously, he used to be a retail owner. By the way, check out Gabe's socks there with the little guitars on them if you didn't already. But this idea that Amazon can't sell high-end guitars, they might not be selling a bunch right now, but bro, give it 5 or 10 years.
So on Amazon, by the way, like when you think about what we can uniquely provide for the musician, like low-end, cheap, toy-like instruments, like that's not where we're going to win.
Right.
Essentially negating, saying, implying that stuff like the Donners are toys, and the Donners, by the way, are definitely not toys. Glary, you could make some comments, and some of this stuff is pretty low end, but there is some legitimately good instruments that are being sold through Amazon. It has to scare Guitar Center quite a bit. I would think that's another reason why they're pushing away from the beginner guitars, because they're never going to be able to compete with sub $200 guitars. Heck, I mean, even Squier has put out sort of an Amazon exclusive guitar, the Squier debut series. So that has to be something that's on their radar,
Right. It really is the premium product is where people are going to take the time and care a lot and want to experience it. And that's why that's important to us. Like we are leaning into that, like really high quality premium product where experience matters. That's where we can win against Amazon. It's not in the low end cheap stuff.
So so here's the thing, Gabe. You might be able to compete against Amazon in selling Gibson Les Pauls, but how are you going to compete against a retail seller that might be smaller than you, but focuses on high-end guitars in the same market? For example, there's, Norman's Rare Guitars, Wildwood Guitars. These places are legendary for, getting special deals from Gibson and Fender and things like that. We have, places here in the Tulsa area that could easily sell a high-end guitar and probably provide a much better experience than Guitar Center could right now. If you want a PRS, Barnett Music Exchange. If you're looking for something really nice on consignment, a really nice high upper-end vintage guitar, Guitar House of Tulsa is going to do it. If you're looking for a new Music Man, you've got Tulsa Guitar Company. There are places to go to get brands that, frankly, Guitar Center's not carrying, and probably, like I said, get a better experience as a result. So yeah, Guitar Center can beat Amazon and Sweetwater maybe in the premium guitar experience, but it's also, you're not a BMW dealership. You're not selling Mercedes. Most of the guitars you're selling are Fords and Chevys, if not Kias and Hyundais. So all of a sudden to say that, we can sell BMWs. Well, I get it. Any dealership could technically sell a high-end car, technically, but would they? Will they be successful at it? That's the real challenge, Gabe. So as the market, by the way, as money becomes tighter, as wallets, money's getting stretched for a lot of families right now economically, to say that we're going to try and sell more $3,000 guitars also seems maybe like a little bit out of touch with what's going on economically. When we see vendors like PRS and Fender just constantly dropping, like, a $599 made in Indonesia Fender standard, okay, a $499 PRS SE. That's what these guys are doing. And I have a feeling that they have a little bit more insight, or a little bit more like, seeing into the future than what Guitar Center seems to be doing right now, which is very strange.
Right. And we'll have entry level, but we're just not going to compete with the, factory direct from China stuff. It's not a winnable space. And then it just comes down to like the other competitors, and, the online competitors are fierce. And the mom and pops, like, I have a lot of sympathy for them, right?
Yeah.
These are business owners and good people and everything else. And, they have to lean into where they can, have relationships and things like that. And we're going to try and do the same thing.
Yeah. And again, most of the small mom and pops here in Tulsa, overwhelming majority of them have focused in on higher end guitars because, like Guitar Center, they know they can't sell Squier Affinity packages and compete with Amazon. But they also know that when they can't compete with the Squier Affinity, they don't sell the Squier Affinity packages, and Guitar Center will continue to do that. If you bought a $5,000 Les Paul Custom or whatever they go for now, and the person behind you in line or in front of you is buying a $199 Squier, how is your experience any different than theirs? Like, what is Guitar Center able to do for you buying a $5,000 guitar that makes you feel special and that you're having a unique experience, as Gabe says? What makes that so special? What are they doing for you that's going to change the way, like, are you going to be treated differently than the Squier player? I mean, and technically you should, right? You should be treated to it. I mean, you go into a dealership that sells BMWs, it's going to be nicer than the lobby of the dealership that sells the Fords, right? Just the way, it's the perception game that we're playing here. The idea is that the customer is making a larger purchase. And so how do you reward them, or how do you make their experience feel different or special when they're in the same store with people who are buying guitars for a fraction of the price? I'm not sure. And I think that's probably something that Guitar Center is going to struggle with for a while, frankly. And just to touch base on his mom and pop, the whole, I have a lot of sympathy for mom and pops. I think he's being very genuine. I don't think he's being disingenuous, but I think some of the sympathy is because he can also empathize with other businesses that are having a hard time adapting to the ever-changing musical instrument market. He can relate with other companies that don't have the capital to invest in a better online presence. He does happen to be steering a massive chain of 300 stores, but his issues really aren't that different from what mom and pops are dealing with because of Sweetwater's dominance in the market. And their dominance in the market is because Guitar Center, again, made choices, and their choices led them to where they are right now, which is they're not leading the pack. They're leading retail. Well, great. You're the biggest of the dinosaurs, and here comes the meteorite, right? I guess, enjoy the ride while it lasts. And to me, again, we're almost done with this, and we're hearing very little about the online space, about how to meet those customers online. How do you compete against Sweetwater? So anyway, it's very interesting.
And I'll say, look, we need to be humble, and we are far from perfect. We're working really hard to get better every day, and this is a journey. And I appreciate you taking notice. And every single day we just got to wake up and say, how do we get a little bit better? And how do we really focus on our customer and making our customers happy? Because you do that, you win. Like if you thrill your customers over time, they're going to reward you with their loyalty, and so that's going to take time. It's going to take time for us to earn that trust.
I don't know. So I don't know if it's an earning a trust situation. This is something I really had to think about and kind of reacting to this or commenting about this. I think the biggest issue with Guitar Center right now is there are bad experiences that we have. You talk about making a good Disneyland experience. I think the biggest thing needs to be correcting the bad experiences, just making them easier, be easier to do business with. Disneyland is not easy to do business with. It's not set up to do business with easily. It's set up to sit and spend all day, with your kids. It is an experience, but it's something that we also don't go to every week or every month. If you want people to go to Guitar Center more often, a Disneyland experience isn't really the picture you want to paint, because that paints a picture of special occasion. I'm only going to go, how many times are you going to go to a theme park in your lifetime, unless you have a season pass or live near one? If you're in Oklahoma, what are the chances you're going to go to Disney World more than maybe once or twice in a lifetime, unless you're a super big fan, right? I think the issues, based on the comments from the last video, I would highly suggest that Guitar Center suffers from some very visible symptoms, right? So I'm going to list a couple of them that I'm noticing here as we kind of wrap this up. So one, they are far from convenient. Again, we've harped on this a lot. The pack of strings shouldn't require a customer to wait longer than 5 minutes. If you want to win customers back, you got to make it easier for those guys to grab high margin accessories, impulse items, and get them through the line. If they want to get out quickly, do that. That's one thing. They're far from convenient. Two, the stores are always disorganized and always kind of grungy, which is what everyone has come to expect from Guitar Center. But, I get it's a high traffic store. We usually are really small staff. Like I said, we don't see more than 2 or 3 employees at a time. In the history of Guitar Center, we've talked about too. They've always run them very, very cheap. Very, very low, very, very low dollar. By the looks of these locations today, not much has really changed. I would also wonder, how much would just get these guys a broom or a vacuum cleaner or something. Like, the other thing I thought that really has hurt Guitar Center, and it's something they still haven't picked up on, is that, Sweetwater, for example, provides a detailed inspection for every guitar that they sell over $399. We talk about that 55-point inspection, and I get it. There's going to be people down in the comments who are like, well, I bought a guitar from Sweetwater and it sucked, and the fret sprout was so bad you could hang in Christmas tree ornaments on it. I get it, man. But for the most part, just offering that inspection, detailing what that inspection is on your website, is doing a lot to create customer confidence. Right now, Guitar Center does none of that. Guitar Center, if you want it like in the back, or if you want a floor model, that's what you get.
The announcement was you closed 2 stores, one in West LA and the other one in somewhere around there.
Yeah, by and large, like, our stores perform really well. Like the West LA, as an example, it wasn't in a great location. The rent was absurdly high. The warehouse was across the street, so there's just a lot of difficulty running that store, and it just didn't make sense. And we had other stores in the vicinity, right, that if someone needed to go to a Guitar Center, they could go to them, right? Like Hollywood, in my opinion, is the best music store in the world. So we felt like we could serve our customer, and those stores just had a couple of really specific challenges that made them just not work.
This is a long way to say, like, they weren't making any money, and we overexpanded in California, which hasn't had the greatest time, and retailers aren't loving it for a variety of reasons. Not to go too deep into that. They've got a lot of locations, and they shut 2 down. Now, they did this in January. I predicted they would have done it sooner. They did not, so that was a big L for me. They did close 2 locations. Now, if you go on Guitar Center's website, and some of this got briefly mentioned, after they made the announcement that they were closing the stores, they also announced a store grand opening, which gives you this impression that, wow, they must have just taken the fuel. They must have closed down those stores. By the way, they laid off a bunch of people. Taken those stores, closed those down, and taken that money, that revenue, and used it to open up a brand new retail location. But of course, this isn't the case. The press release is very vague. I'll show that here as I'm talking, but that never quite states what really happened here until you look at a newspaper article, and I'll link that below, and I'll show that here as well, essentially saying that, well, there's a Brooklyn store that they're having a grand opening, but the store was previously in the basement of a subway terminal, and we basically moved it to a street-facing location. So it's not a new store. We just moved a store from one place to another. But you can tell from the press release that it was a little vague intentionally to give you the impression, to give you the idea that Guitar Center has indeed opened up a new location. But no, as of right now, the recording of this, Guitar Center has 301 retail locations. They're still the biggest retail music store in the U.S., of course.
It's important that the person in my seat is a musician.
Now, what makes that convenient for Gabe to say that is that he himself is a musician. I want to push back on that a little bit. He's going to talk a little bit about his background and growing up and playing music and all that stuff. I don't know how relevant this is going to be to this. So, look, I don't think it hurts that the CEO of Guitar Center can play Smoke on the Water, but I think saying that it should be a requirement or it's going to help them in the job, that's a little much. You know, most of us guitar players have either played a Fender guitar or own Fender guitars, and those guitars were developed by a guy who did not play guitar, right? Leo Fender, okay? Just in case you didn't know that. Look that up. Ted McCarty, the president of Gibson, from what we'd consider the golden age of the electric guitar from Gibson, right? 1950 to 1966. Dude didn't play guitar for a bit. You know, he really sunk that company too when he couldn't play all those tasty licks, right? Right? You know, Wayne Mitchell, the founder of Guitar Center, that's who, there we go. See, Wayne Mitchell, and the name, the house brand Mitchell is named after. Dude was a used car salesman, did not play guitar. Started Guitar Center as Organ Center, like the music organ, and changed the name because of Beatlemania, essentially. He had to start carrying Vox amps and guitars, and the rest is history. So this idea that the Guitar Center CEO needs to be a rock and guitar player. I get it, Gabe. You can play. It's cool. That's cool. I think it's awesome. I think it helps, sort of, but I mean, you still got to run a retail store. You know what I mean? It's all about profit and loss and store displays and, you know.
We are nothing if we don't listen. And the first, I think, day 3, when I joined the company, I just went out and worked in the stores. And I checked people out.
Again, I went out and I worked at the retail locations that we just shut 2 down just recently. I worked at those places, those thriving pillars of commerce.
I worked in the warehouse, talked to our associates, and I'm constantly just asking questions. So, and I asked 3 questions. I said, what are we great at? So we can keep doing that.
Think about that. Put that down in the comments. What is Guitar Center great at? I'm at a loss for words, frankly. I don't know what they're good. They're retail. They got a big store. They've got some cool selection. Okay. Maybe convenient for me. They're 10 minutes away from me. Prices don't suck. They're not terrible, I guess.
What do we suck at?
Oh.
So we can,
yeah, what do we suck at? I mean, we've talked about that. Numerous things.
Stop it. And then what should we do totally differently? And how do we innovate, right?
How do we innovate and do things differently? More online emphasis. make it easier for people to order things online that they can pick up at a store, make it easier for people to order things online, make it easier for people to buy used things, make it easier for someone to buy a used product in a different store across the country, make it so where stores can hold stock that they can ship to people in their area, and as opposed to like if I order, Phil McKnight brought this up on the video. I'm not going to play it for you here, but he ordered a speaker. Guitar Center took like 5 days. And the Guitar Center near Phil had the product, but they ended up shipping it from a warehouse that was 2 or 3 states away because their system doesn't do that. And Gabe also mentions that, we stopped shipping from stores after people complained that their new guitars had a bunch of smudges and little scuffs on it because they're floor models. They're not truly new guitars. Interesting, right?
Right. I ask everybody, our customers, our associates, everybody. And that's the strategy we're on now, is the answers to those questions just boiled up in a real consistent theme. And here we are. And it just began with listening.
Okay, so when I watch this interview, I just get the impression that Guitar Center hasn't learned from this mistake or can no longer afford to write their course. Just like I did last time, I want to make 3 predictions for the next 12 months. If I'm still doing these videos, we may even do another follow-up. Prediction number 1. I predict more store closures. I don't know when it's going to happen. If it happens this year, you're probably going to see it in the middle of the year. You're less likely to see it at the end of the year when Christmas is happening and stores are going to report their biggest profits or sales. So if they do have more stores closed, it'll be in the summertime or early the following year. But I can't see how they're going to avoid it. And a lot of this isn't even their fault. Economically, it's a rough time. It's a super soft guitar market. The market is flooded with very inexpensive used guitars. And frankly, those who can't afford it are probably not interested in paying retail for a highly used floor model, right? Number 2, I would say expect to see some supply issues. Again, this isn't Guitar Center's fault, but I'm sure that the current tariff situation and imports and exports and duties and all this kind of stuff is going to wreak some havoc for a major chain of guitar stores where most of their product is sourced from places like China and Indonesia and things like that. Number 3. This is interesting. We haven't really talked about this yet, but I would expect to see more issues with Guitar Centers accepting counterfeit guitars, mostly the counterfeit Fender and the Gibsons, the Chipsons, as we've talked about. You've even probably seen articles where stores have accepted Chipsons thinking they were real guitars and either turned around and sold them or we're getting ready to sell them, or there was some issue. In Phil McKnight's Q&A following this interview, I'll clip it.
That when I was standing around, right, waiting, doing stuff, right, there was a couple employees. They had made a comment that originally when they made the mock store, instead of all the inventory now, which is the correct inventory because they had to lay it all out, his store was just full of nothing but fake Gibsons. All the fake Gibsons that had been traded in and sold to Guitar Centers. Apparently it's what they're at. They're there at the corporate headquarters. They just accumulate them up. I'm sure at some point they destroy them or whatever. I didn't ask because they take it in the shorts every time a store takes in a fake Gibson.
That to me really shows that this is where your product and employee training really needs to come in handy. I feel like I can't imagine that Gibson wouldn't send somebody, or that you could send employees out to Nashville and not have that be a profitable situation, because, if you're taking 100 Chipsons a year, well, you're probably losing $1,000 for each Chipson that you're buying. So, I'm not great at math, but that's a lot of money that you're losing. $1,000 100 times over. And I imagine it's probably more than that with 300 locations. I imagine 1 or 2 fraudulent guitars just kind of slip through to these locations, right? So it's a really interesting situation. And again, when you don't have a great training schedule and program, I'm baffled by the way that employees that sell Gibson guitars are taking in fakes. Some of them are getting pretty good on the fake market, but most of these are fairly easy to tell. Just from the finish alone is going to be something that's going to tell you. But yeah, expect to see more articles where they're taking in fake guitars and counterfeit guitars, because the counterfeits are also going to get better, and it's also going to be tougher to determine what's real and what's fake. And with the economy going the way it is, you're going to see a lot more people start dumping their used guitars onto the market. Hey, well, I think that's it. I'm going to call it for this episode. Obviously, my lighting is not as good as it used to be. It's been a minute since I've done one of these episodes, so I've kind of forgotten some of my ways. I hope this didn't bother you too much. Well, I hope you guys really enjoyed the episode. Again, following up with our friends over at Guitar Center is always a good time. Appreciate all you watching this far. Remember, like, subscribe, check out the videos, and hey, we'll see you again real soon. Okay? Thank you. Bye.